Well, hello and welcome to another episode of the Legal Gym Podcast. Thank you so much for joining me today. Today we're going to be talking about when you should consider trademarking your business name. I know we've been doing a lot of episodes lately about trademarking. I've got like 8 or 10 more left that I really want to cover. These are topics that I really want to get into with regards to trademarks that I think are really important for you. So just bear with me here. We're going to get through these by probably beginning of November, and then I've got some really special guests I'm starting to line up for you. So that's what's coming on in the future of the podcast. But for the show notes for today's episode, which are going to include all of the links and resources for everything that we're going to be talking about today, make sure you head on over to hawthornelaw.net/24. That's the number 24. And that's where you can find all the links and resources for everything we're talking about. So let's go ahead and dive into today's episode. Before we get into the amazing content for today's episode, I wanted to let you know about a new training that I'm working on. I'm going to be teaching my 4R framework to get your trademarks registered quickly and easily. In addition, I'll be sharing the top 3 mistakes that I see online entrepreneurs make that can sabotage their brand and even force them into bankruptcy. So if you want to sleep better at night knowing that your brand is protected, you definitely don't want to miss this training. Just head on over to hawthornelaw.net/trademark to get notified when the training is live. One more time, that's hawthornelaw.net/trademark. And don't forget, everyone who attends this training is going to get a free gift. So if you're an entrepreneur who is building a brand online, this is one training you don't want to miss. One more time, head on over to hawthornelaw.net/trademark to get signed up for the notification list today. All right, so basically what I want to cover today is I want to talk a little bit about why trademarking is important. I want to talk about what's at stake if you don't take your trademark seriously. I want to talk about how things are going to change for you if you have a valid trademark. And then finally, I'm going to talk about who should be registering your trademark. You might think, well, this is something maybe I should talk about at the beginning of the episode, but I think it's important that you go through all these other steps first. And then with all that backdrop in mind, then we can talk about who should be taking their trademark seriously and going forward and actually registering their trademark. So let's start with, why is trademarking your name so important? And the reason that trademarking your name is so important is because you need to file a federal trademark in order to claim the legal rights to your name. And that's because you don't actually own the rights to your name until you have a federal trademark. And you need to claim those rights before somebody else claims those rights for you. And you should understand, before I go any further today, that when I say why is trademarking your name important, what I'm really referencing here is filing a federal trademark application, because trademarking is not actually a thing. That's a lot of people say that, and that's not actually a thing. It doesn't work that way. What we're talking about when we say trademarking is we're really talking about filing a federal trademark application with the United States Patent and Trademark Office, or the USPTO. And everybody, you can use any name you want in your business, and you could basically own the common law trademark rights to that. And you can do that without filing any paperwork at all with the Federal Trademark Office. But the problem with doing it that way is that these rights are limited, and you only have the common law rights to kind of the geographic area where you use your name. Also, it's difficult to enforce your common law rights without a trademark registration to back it up. And so there's a lot of reasons why just relying solely on those common law rights is not a great way to do it. I probably should do an entire episode about why common law trademark rights are not sufficient to protect your trademarks, but we'll save that for another episode. So the first reason that you should trademark your name is because you want to claim those legal rights to your name. And it's important that you do that before someone else does, because right now there are hundreds of thousands of applications getting filed each and every year at the U.S. Patent and Trademark Office. And that means that there's fewer and fewer names that are available for people to use as a federally protected trademark. And so if you want to make sure that the name that you're thinking about using is actually available, you're giving yourself the best chance to do that by filing that trademark application as soon as possible. So that's number one. The second reason why trademarking is so important is because you don't want to become an accidental infringer. And what do I mean by that? What I mean by that is that you could be using a name, you could be building a brand and building equity in that brand for years before you realize that somebody else actually has the registered trademark to that name. And the reason why it can take years is because you're building up the name. Nobody knows who you are when you're first starting in business, and it might take a couple years before you gain some notoriety. And at that point, when you gain that notoriety, if you haven't taken any action to actually register the rights to your federal trademarks, then somebody else could have had that federal trademark in place long before you ever were in business. And if that's the case, when you start to get big, that's exactly when they're going to send you a cease and desist letter, because before that point, number one, they probably didn't know about you. Number two, it really is not worth their time to necessarily try and shut you down, because most businesses fail within the first 5 years. And so you want to make sure that you're not accidentally infringing on somebody else. And so that's the other reason why it's important to actually file a federal trademark application. So let's talk a little bit about what is at stake if you do not file your federal trademark application. Well, the first reason is fairly obvious, and we just kind of alluded to this. It's that you could spend lots of time, lots of money building a brand just to have someone basically take it from you because they decide to file a trademark application first. I mean, I want you to think about this as an example. Let's say you had a brand and you were building that brand up, and somebody saw what you were doing on Facebook. Maybe you were running some ads to a course that you were offering, and they thought, you know what, that looks pretty cool, but they're not using that little R with the circle thingy behind their name. They might not have the federal trademark for that. I'm going to check this out and see if they do. And then they do a search. They figure out that you do not have the federal trademark for that because you have not filed an application. And they decide to go ahead and file that trademark application before you do. So now you've got this big brand that you're building and starting to get some success with, and somebody just took that name from you and started their own brand with that name. And now once their trademark registers, they can actually shut you down with a cease and desist letter. So that is one thing that's at stake. The other thing that's at stake is, again, you could spend all this time and money building up a brand just to receive that cease and desist letter from another business that was already established. And they, by doing that, force you into an expensive rebrand. So, I mean, can you imagine spending years of your life building up a brand, having loyal customers, having a podcast maybe around that name or a YouTube channel around that name, and then all of a sudden you have to rebrand the name that everybody knows you for? It's going to have a profound effect on your business if you have to do that. And it's going to cost you some money. Not to mention the money that you're going to have to spend in actually rebranding your business and coming up with a new logo, coming up with a new name, and all these things that you might have to do. Or if you have goods that you sell that are already marked with your trademark, but now you can't sell those goods because the person that sends you the cease and desist letter says that you have to stop selling immediately. These are all things, very real scenarios that do happen in day-to-day life, and things that you do not want to see happen with your business. You do not want to go through an expensive rebrand just when your business is getting going. It could literally put you out of business. So those are kind of things that are at stake. Now let's talk about what things look like when you have a valid trademark. Well, first of all, you can use your name without fear, because if you've been through the trademark process and your name has been registered as a federal trademark, then you can use that name without fear that somebody else is going to steal it from you, because you have the exclusive rights to that name. Because once you have that registered trademark, before when I said, when you're just getting started and you are using a name as your trademark, but you only have common law rights, you don't actually own the rights to that name. But when you have a registered trademark, you do own the rights to that name. And you can stop anybody else from trying to steal that name from you with a relatively inexpensive cease and desist letter from a lawyer. And I do recommend having a lawyer draft that for you. Again, this is something that's probably better left for another episode. We'll talk about cease and desist letters, what they are and how they can be used, and how to avoid them, I might also add. But you can use your name without fear that somebody's going to take it from you. And if you do see another business attempting to use your name, then you can just shut them down and not have to worry about that anymore. You don't have to worry about somebody stealing your name just because it's an awesome name. So if you built that course or that business or that brand or that podcast or whatever it might be, and somebody sees what you're doing, and now you've got that R with the circle behind it because you're legally allowed to use that once you have a registered trademark, then they're going to know, hey, this person's got a trademark. I'm not going to use this name. Believe me, there are people out there who literally look around for businesses that are doing really well but have not registered their trademark, and they will steal your mark. So be careful about that. Also, once your brand gets going, you don't have to worry about getting that cease and desist letter because somebody already has the registered trademark for the name that you're using because you've got the registered trademark for that name. And then probably one of the biggest things, and this is really important, is after 5 years of using that name on the principal register, you can file what's called a declaration of incontestability with the U.S. Patent and Trademark Office. And if you meet the legal requirements to do this, it basically means that it's that much harder for someone to cancel your mark or challenge it in a future filing, because those things can happen. I see that every single day. Somebody, if they have the common law rights to a name and they've been using it for 10 or 20 years and they can prove that, they can actually make a motion with the USPTO to cancel your mark if you're using the same mark. Is it expensive? Yes. Is it hard to do? Yes. Is it possible? Yes. But once you've been operating with that name for 5 years and you file that declaration of incontestability, it basically makes it next to impossible for someone to cancel your trademark. And so that's another thing, another huge benefit to having that valid trademark is the longer you have it, the stronger your rights are in that trademark. So let's talk about who should register a trademark. Well, anyone who's currently or thinking about building a brand online that is not their name, because you cannot register your name unless it has some sort of independent significance outside of the fact that it's you. I've got this question all the time because people see other brands out there that are actually registered as trademarks. And yes, that is possible in certain scenarios, but for most people who are just starting and running an online business and trying to build a personal brand, you cannot register the trademark to your name. Now, if you're thinking about starting a business either online or offline, then you definitely want to consider registering the name that you're using for your brand. And then finally, anyone listening to this podcast, because unless you just really like my late night DJ voice, then you're probably listening to this podcast for information that's going to help you legally protect your business. And if that's the case, then you probably already have a brand name in mind that you want to use for your business or that you are using for your business. And if that sounds like you, then we definitely should talk, and we definitely should talk about registering the name for your trademark. If you are interested in learning more about how to legally claim the rights to your brand, then you're going to want to schedule a free branding strategy call with me. That's right. For a limited time, I'm offering a free strategy call to talk with me about the branding for your online business and how to make sure it is legally protected. So if you'd like to learn more, head on over to hawthornelaw.net/TM-video. Once again, that's hawthornelaw.net/TM-video. On that landing page, we have lots of great information about the process of protecting your brand so that you don't have to worry about getting a cease and desist letter or being forced to rebrand your business at a great expense. Once again, that website is hawthornelaw.net/TM-video, and I look forward to talking with you soon. All right, all you Legal Gym listeners, now that you know more about when you should trademark your business name, you are ready to implement, because if there's one thing we love to do over here at the Legal Gym, it's to take massive action. So if you haven't already, make sure to check out the show notes page for today's episode. You can get a rundown of all the links and resources that we talked about here today by visiting hawthornelaw.net/24. That's the number 24. That's going to be the home base for all of your legal and business tools and resources to help you start, build, and of course, legally protect your online business. Thank you so much for listening. I look forward to seeing you or talking with you in the next episode.